it's Amanda. I'm here with Eric today.
Hey.
So, who are we interviewing today?
So today we have the honor of interviewing veteran LCS jungler for Team Crumbz, Dignitas Renegades, the former coach of Apex, a world's desk analyst, and known as the Prophet, Crumbz.
So let's get started. Hey Alberto, thanks for speaking with us today. So how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm a little tired because it's getting hectic with all the things that keep getting announced and all the new endeavors that I keep pursuing, but overall I think it's going quite well because the off season's just barely starting for League, so it's a chaotic time and want to stay busy.
Alright, so as a player, when did you want to start building your brand? So a lot of people when they start playing, they think about their gameplay and their mechanics. When did you start thinking I need to develop my brand as Crumbz beyond being just a player?
I think right when I started and I realized that there was a value to the ranking that I had achieved, I realized that that could be something that is worth marketing. So very early on I realized, I tried to stream a lot, even though I couldn't, my computer couldn't do it, just because I kept hearing, you know what, people want to watch a high ranked player just play the game. So I figured this is something that I can definitely do. And ever since that, and the positive reception that kind of idea got, I always wanted to do that.
Okay. So people talk about teams like how SKT practice more than about 10 hours a day, which is something that was only recently adopted by TSM. Do you think that the West is kind of closing the gap between Korea?
So I think that I think that both those teams play more than that.
Oh.
But
wow.
I don't think that the issue is necessarily about their skill. I think that a lot of the Korean players have come out and said, yeah, you know what, these guys they're pretty good, especially for this Worlds. They didn't play up to the standard that they had set for themselves before. So I don't think it's a matter of the skill being there, it's being able to perform, because there's a lot more, I think there's a lot more pressure on Western players, and I'm not going to blame it on that. I think that there's a lot more distractions and things that are inherently in the minds of Western players that just aren't there. It's not integrated into the Korean culture, or winning is just so important that they really are going to do everything in their power to win, as opposed to what happens here a lot, which is, oh yeah, you know what, I'm working my ass off, which just means I'm playing solo queue 16 hours a day, not really getting anything done, and more importantly, a lot of the times they're not willing to have one authority figure just completely dictate the pace of the game, which I think helps a lot in playing in unison as a team. So until that gets fully adopted, I think that we'll still keep losing.
What do you think about the use of substitute players in the LCK more frequently to change the team atmosphere? Say during immediately after a loss, they would sub in Blank or Bangi to switch out, because they say it's a team that we didn't lose with, so they head in with the next match with a fresh mindset. Do you think in NA we'll see more teams using their sub more often in 2017?
Hopefully, I think it's a great idea, but the issue that happens is that teams aren't really willing to give other players a chance like that. They'd rather put all the practice into one player, and I think that SKT has the luxury of already being in such a high level of play that they can afford to lose some games to try to play from a deficit position and give their other players more practice, whereas in North America you might have a mid-tier team that really doesn't feel comfortable just subbing in every single time in order to improve. And we saw that only with Cloud9, which I thought was a good idea overall, but it's going to be difficult for other teams to adapt, because that means keeping another player for your roster. That means somebody else that's just sitting there watching VODs, and it's not something that I think a lot of players want to do, that they want to be in that position as oh, I'm just a sub with little chance of actually playing kind of thing. So it's a matter of, again, the ego of a lot of players of willing to take a backseat role within the team.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna bring something back to NA. We have to talk about the letter that made its way onto Reddit. Assuming it is the team owners who leaked the document, is it right for them to use the media and the community as leverage to force Riot to take their demands seriously?
Is it? Wow. Okay, I did not expect that one. So It's a strange thing because particularly Reddit itself, or the League of Legends community, is incredibly influential in what happens within League of Legends. The popularity of players, ideas, pretty much everything within League does fall under a big Reddit umbrella. So using that as a way to make Riot notice is a good way of getting their message across. Be it, if the morality is there, I'm not really too keen on thinking if it's right or wrong. I think that ultimately they're just trying to make investments and they just want more safety and more money. I think that the TLDR of the whole thing is we just want more money, and they're just kind of showing we're willing to go to these lengths kind of thing. They're just starting with like, hey, here's a finger of what we're capable of. We want more money.
Alright, so about the Challenger Series, we saw in EU they had success in 2015 when they brought Origin into the LCS, so it showed like how we have a Challenger team reach the LCS level, but in North America we haven't seen a similar amount of success. So what do you think needs to change about Challenger like playoff relegations for people to like procure more talent for LCS teams?
I mean, well, the thing is that the Challenger scene just isn't lucrative enough by comparison. The salaries aren't there. The players aren't there. You're basically sitting at B tier in usually every regard in terms of, hell, even the gaming house is worse than pros. So there's really not a whole lot of appeal for players to be there, and it's more like another opportunity for you to become a professional. So that's why it doesn't get a whole lot of traction. And then even more, the fact that players don't get LAN experience makes it even more unappealing, because ultimately every pro wants to play in LAN. Nobody just wants to sit at home playing online all day, not getting the practice that's necessary if you want to make it to Worlds. And so if the Challenger scene really wants to be developed to a point where it does matter to fans more, it has to come to a LAN. It has to be watched, because let's say that your favorite team gets relegated, there's no way for you to keep going to the LCS on Sundays or Saturdays and watch them. You're done. Your favorite team is no longer watchable from live, so you're gonna just go and cheer for somebody else. So that's one of the things that I think really lacks in terms of the Challenger series, that hopefully, if relegation is to go, that will be improved.
Alright, so one more question about the Challenger scene. So right now, we saw how Cloud9 was super successful with their Challenger team. So if Cloud9, Liquid, and other teams started investing into like Challenger teams and saturate the Challenger scene, don't you think that would cut off the path to pro for some players wanting to go through, because it saturated veteran LCS players? And we all understand that by having the secondary team, it's safe. Say, for example, if Cloud9 were to get relegated, they'd have this backup squad who would earn them a spot for the next season, which is a loophole in the rule set. And you see Riot Games changing this rules so you can't have a secondary team in the Challenger series, just like how they banned sister teams in the main series.
So I think the issue with that idea is that, well, in pure reality, it's too expensive for these teams to want to invest in that with zero return, because of what we mentioned earlier, the lack of advertisement, the lack of exposure that the Challenger series get by comparison to an LCS team. So let's say you're the bottom tier LCS team. If you do a good job with your marketing, with your branding, with your players, there is a way for you to actually be making money while just not doing very well. Whereas in the Challenger series, if you're going to invest enough money to saturate it with the professional players that you have to pay LCS salaries for, you're not going to get a return on investment at any point until you completely qualify, because there is no advertisement, because there is no land for anybody to go for. So I don't think that the teams will ever group up and say, we just want to put all our money into this, because considering the bigger investors that are coming in, they're not going to be going off these very big risks, right? They're going into these organizations that are already established, that already have a game plan set, and they're simply trying to help them out, as opposed to let's start going with new ideas off the wall here. But if that were to happen, then I mean, it would just be a secondary league, and I think it would be resembling the soccer leagues in Europe, where the top team that drops out simply moves onto a bottom league and kind of moves back and forth with the leagues already being established, but within a two-league system.
There's been a lot of criticism lately about how the current LCS system causes a lack of job security. So many argue that the job security risk is associated with being a player that's performance-based and everything. So traditionally, players who are good enough have been picked up again after their old team was relegated and like during the off seasons, right? So what do you think about the job security as a pro player?
So as a player, if you have relegations, it's really difficult for you to feel like you have job security at all, even if you eventually are picked up by somebody else, because of the difficulties of being approached during the regular split. The owners have to speak to owners, and then that message needs to be directed to the player, and that might take weeks, that might take months for anything to actually come to be finalized. And you're just in a position where there's so much unknown that it's quite stressful, considering that you don't know what's going to happen next year, right? That you invested your life to moving out to Los Angeles. Yeah. So the job security aspect is definitely one that's quite harsh for a lot of these players, and they don't think about it too much unless you've gotten to the point where it's the end of the split, it's the end of the year, where you're not sure what to do. But I really hope that that's something that can be done to improve for the future, to just better the lives of the players, to make sure that they have some sort of security. And I think that removing the complete removal of a lower league definitely hurts that, because it doesn't give the players a chance to just bounce back up. But hopefully, if that is to be removed, there will most definitely be a replacement for that, in terms of this is somewhere that if you're not good enough for the LCS, you can kind of work your way back up here.
That'd be a really good idea.
So while we're on the topic of leagues, we can step back and talk about like player salaries, as you mentioned earlier. So the LCS doesn't have the luxury of ticket sales, broadcasting, like right sales, and it's also like there's a lot of debate about endemic teams versus like venture capital teams that are like trying to like get into the LCS. So in North America, like there's a lot of talk about like franchising the LCS. And Blizzard recently, like people have looked to that model because they plan for their Overwatch League for like geolocalization, where there will be city-based teams. Instead of having everyone clustered around the LCS studio, everyone will be dispersed to a different city, similar to like the NHL. And they'll be traveling around with the backing of these venture capital companies. They'll be supporting them like transport and building their brand with their wealth of experience. So do you think, what do you think is holding back Riot from like approaching these venture capital investors and then doing a similar approach that Blizzard did? Because they really put down the gauntlet when they announced this at BlizzCon last month.
Well, I think esports is certainly a new market and just a new concept in general, so I don't think that it's completely fair to disregard any system that might not be used by any other league before. I think that we definitely have a right to say, let's try this idea as well. But for the localization, there's a ton of different pros and cons to both ways. Absolutely right, because like the competitive fans, they're not going to be very happy about the localization, right? You're sticking to a team, that kind of thing. But if you're a casual player, let's say that you play casually with your friends in Idaho, and then out of nowhere you hear, oh, there's a league team coming here. You're like, okay, this is my team now. So you're able to grow that other fan base much more significantly. Whereas in Los Angeles, you can kind of fill the stadium most of the time because it's here and there's a ton of people around. But the merits of having it be run completely by this way offers some much more control over how they want the league to be ran, as opposed to perhaps, let's say that every different city that runs a league is run by a different production company, right? That might cause a lot of difficulties because the budgets might not be there to have such a grand idea come up right from the get-go that can be identical in every city. But I think that the approach towards localization, or not localization, the approach that's currently in the LCS can have its benefits if it's done or executed more efficiently, right? There's so much more that you can do with that idea to make it exciting, to just change things up. For example, they had some finals that were outdoors, other venues, right? You can randomly change the venue within that same city to bigger arenas that can be much more engaging for the audience to say, oh, we're going back to the Nokia Theater today, or the LCS playoffs are going to be taking place in Galen, and that kind of thing. I think does a lot more for the fan base because it makes it feel more like a big tournament as opposed to that small venue.
So in case some people aren't aware, you and your partners have formed the agency of Professional Esports. How are you planning to deal with the specific needs of teams and players from different esports titles?
So that agency, APE, the idea is to basically remove as many of the responsibilities from the player that aren't playing and take them upon ourselves. So we have the 3 guys that come from 3 different backgrounds: Matthew Poe from the NFL, Jason Moore from Hollywood, and myself from League. And I think that us 3 can kind of tackle or all of the things that the player is currently needing, right? Because we have lawyers that we can hire out in case there's anything needed for law regards. And then as a player myself, I think that I offer the value of understanding where the player is coming from, the kind of situations and encounters that they go through in their daily lives. And through that, I can reiterate it to my partners and be like, hey, you know what, this person needs that. You know, take him out for lunch, that kind of thing. And there's everything from being on call 24/7 to flying out to wherever they may need it, to personal assistance, finances, anything necessary for the players is something that we're basically taking upon ourselves to improve their lives, to make sure that playing is the only thing that they have to do, because that's the approach that owners have been taking in improving their players' performance, by having a gaming house so you don't have to move around, by having a chef so you don't have to cook, by having a manager so you don't have to take care of your things. Over and over, you remove more and more things, performance improves, and hopefully players, teams, owners, etc. can come to the realization that we're all on the same team here and trying to just make sure that the player is playing as much as possible, as effectively as possible, with as little distractions, which comes back to the whole goal of what we mentioned earlier with the difference between the West and East in terms of playing. There's a different culture there. So instead of trying to simply ingrain that culture into the West, which is unlikely to work, we're simply just trying to grab all those things that are unnecessary clutter in the minds of a player and take it upon ourselves to allow them to have that freedom of mind.
So I want to touch upon franchising the LCS. So it's a very popular topic lately, where a lot of teams want to be chartered, as said in the letter. And Riot has been pretty resistant on even letting 3 teams bid for a permanent spot. And the argument is by Hotshot that they've been such an integral part of building the LCS fan base after over 6 years in the series, that they feel like they deserve a spot, to have a permanent spot in the LCS. And with the permanent spot, the argument is that then more sponsors will be able to invest into them because of this security for the spot. Whereas Riot has just been not telling anyone their plans about how they want to franchise the LCS format. So do you think there will be room for these endemic teams to be franchised, or will Riot just wait for sponsor teams like the 76ers to step in, and then they'll consider franchising more often?
I mean, I think both sides of the coin are definitely have something to say about the matters. It's just it's difficult to understand the entire situation without completely knowing the ideas of, say, Riot and the owners. But I think that it is worth noting that I'm not sure what the consequence is behind, hey, if you don't franchise this, we're gonna really go through with this kind of thing. But it's a lot different for teams to be willing to put their names on a letter than actually be willing to go through with whatever consequence might arise from not getting the demands that they specify. With that being said, it definitely makes sense for both endemics and non-endemics to want the franchising, and I think that the idea that the value that they've brought to the LCS is not the strongest argument, because while it's true, most certainly, what is really at stake here is that teams want to make more money. They want to have sponsorships, right? It's been years now, they want to have the non-endemic sponsors come in because they know, right, the teams are ready for receiving that kind of exposure. They know they can work with it, but it's just not happening because it doesn't have that security. It doesn't have any way for a non-endemic to come in and say, all right, so we want to give you a deal for a year. They come in the first half of the year and they're like, wait a minute, you're telling me that there's a chance that you're not gonna do this for, if you get relegated we're not doing the other half of this. No, thank you, right? There's always that kind of thing, and these deals usually last a very long time. So there's zero appeal for these non-endemics, and considering that all these new investors and venture capitalists and tons of money are coming in, these people are very smart with their money. They don't want to get put in a position where they're have massive odds that are against them with very little reward. So I think that it makes total sense, and we should just wait for more transparency out of both parties to be able to figure out exactly what's going on.
I think it's good to touch upon energy right here, because with the classic example of a venture capitalist investing into the LCS without completely understanding what they're getting into, and you compare them to how Noah Winston managed the Immortals, bring on staff that knew esports and knew what players needed. You could see the drastic differences in the results by the end of the split. And like you said, by the end of relegation, their contract said that they would disband the team if they were ever into the Challenger Series. So it's kind of discouraging to see a venture capitalist team not perform so well and have to liquidate their entire team. And it reflects badly upon the whole system, because sponsors now be more hesitant because they saw the millions that were poured into this team not bring home the results they wanted.
And it hurts everyone. I mean, I believe that match was Energy versus Echo Fox. Both are great names for having inside esports, and then the fact that you're basically watching these guys battle it out and somebody's losing a massive investment and just having a tremendously negative impact on the growth of the scene is nothing that anybody wants to go through, especially considering how stressful relegation is for all parties involved. I mean, even for the players, a lot of the times, or if not every single time, when relegations comes around, it's always a matter of just, we can't try anything new. We need to make sure that we stay practicing. Let's, stick by this, and then the games start devolving into something completely boring, as opposed to not having relegation where you can have teams say, you know what, we're dead last, nothing's gonna happen. Let's try to switch things up. Let's try that off pick that you thought about. Let's try this new guy. And they're more willing to have that risk. And by that same coin, pretty much every org that comes into the scene never has their sights on let's win. It's always, let's not get relegated for this first split.
Yeah, so what are your thoughts on Canadian esports? Do you see this industry growing in NA outside of the States? Because, for example, Canadian talents like Wild Turtle, Biofrost, and even yourself have relocated to the US. Is the ecosystem in Canada not at the level that it can support its own teams? And is this foreseeable with franchising and geolocalized esports organizations?
So I do know that the Canadian esports scene is growing. Is it at the same level? Not really. But the geolocalization should help Canada as well, considering that we do have teams participating in the NBA and the NHL, right? So it definitely does help, or MLB, pretty much all the major leagues Canada is involved in. So that will help. But I think that Canadians would have no issues just doing whatever esports is in Canada, as long as the options are as many and as lucrative. Because here in the States, I mean, you just have so many different things that you can do about esports, whereas in Canada, you have 2 organizations coming up, and it's just like a startup kind of idea. So it's very risky and not something that you want to immediately involve yourself in full time, because you don't know what the rewards are going to be, right? You could have used that time to go to the States, and I know a lot more people that are from Canada that are just fascinated with the idea of moving to LA and trying to make it there in esports, as opposed to trying to make it happen within Canada.
We touched on some serious topics today. I just want to back up and just be so what have you been up to, and do you have any plans for the holidays now that Worlds is over? I know you're busy with your new agency.
So let's see. What have I been up to? Well, I've been working out almost every day, and the last couple of days I've been too busy to even do that, which I've been kind of sad about. I have a bicycle. I received a bicycle as a gift, but it's a fixed gear. So now instead of Ubering everywhere, I use my bike, and it's quite the workout, and I really like it because it's another way of just being fit and kind of doing more planning as well, because you know exactly how long it's going to take. All right, let's go. You get on the road. The shitty thing is that the air in LA is quite bad, so my throat hurts a lot after you breathe in the air and it hurts, so that's not good.
Not comparable to Vancouver's beautiful weather.
Yeah, not at all. I'm really missing out. I'm also doing IEM Oakland, which is in a couple of days, so I will be attending that as an analyst. I was doing the ULOL matches as a commentator, and I think that I'll be able to do the one for UBC, which I believe is the day after Thanksgiving here in the States, like the 29th of November, one of those days, which should definitely be quite fun. Let's see. I do a lot of things. I do lots of meetings, content for teams, content for websites. I haven't been around to much gaming, unfortunately, because my laptop can't run all the games that I like to play. I can't even run League most of the time.
Oh no.
But it plays Overwatch and it plays RuneScape, so I just kind of play those. Hopefully I get a new one soon. I've been scouting around and then just watching shows and just kind of doing a lot of self-improvement, like reading, trying to learn an instrument, that kind of thing.
So from your time as a pro player, what would you say was your most memorable or hilarious moment?
Oh, I definitely have a lot of memorable moments. Let's see. Some of the funnest ones were doing an ARAM at the MLG finals. That was really fun. So we got to the first game of the finals for a match that was really important. We decided to go ARAM instead. And this was before there was a map. This was just going straight down middle lane and pretending it was ARAM.
Oh, no.
So that was cool. There was also beating Coast twice with the same team composition. That was super fun. So we ran Mundo, Wukong, Karthus, Jinx, Annie in like 1 week, and then a couple of weeks later we ran the exact same comp against them and beat them again with it. So that kind of stuff's always super fun to me. And then, I don't know, I really just enjoy my life, to be honest, in terms of esports. Every moment is always quite memorable to me. I have a pretty good memory as well, so I'm pretty grateful for all of it.
Aw, that's good.
Do you ever think you'll pick up your education back at UBC? Because I know you made it to like second year in arts. Will you ever like finish that up?
So actually, there's a chance that I definitely go back and attempt university, because when I was there, I always saw people in their 30s in some of my classes just being the best students there whatsoever. They were really interested in learning, and that's kind of what I wanted to be if I went back to university. I wanted to be the person that was just on top of everything and just completely delighted to be there. So until I feel like I'm at that point, I won't be going back. Although I've definitely taken quite an interest in just self-teaching myself things. So if anything, there's a chance that I also go completely down that route and just teach myself the things that I value, the things that I want to know about. I mean, I've learned a lot about philosophy, religion, art, just history, just so many things on my own, just looking them up and really going out of my way to learn, that I think that approach definitely feels more unique to me and just easier to relate to, because it's stuff that I want to learn. It seems like other schools around the world, especially Finland, take that similar approach where they're teaching people what they want to learn, so that they feel like they're more accomplished, I guess, because I know a lot of times there's a lot of people in the world and a lot of them feel like they don't have a purpose.
True. Self-improving is always a good thing. So I have one last question for you before we move on to our game. And this is the most important question out of all of them. And so it's, if you had to eat only one cookies crumb for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the rest of your life, which cookies crumb would it be?
Ooh. I don't even like sweets.
Oh no, pick a salty one.
Maybe I'd go with oatmeal raisin.
Oatmeal raisin. Okay.
That's a rare selection.
Yeah. But you get all your like fiber, and you get kind of like fruits, kind of dried fruit as well.
Well, it's also it's fitting for a lot of situations, right? It's not very heavy. I can't have chocolate every single meal.
True.
So if I have oatmeal raisin, it can work for breakfast, it can work for dinner, and lunch not so much, but I'm willing to pass up on lunch.
He's thought this through. Alright, so they're numbered 1 through 6, I believe, and they're just hairstyles. This game is called LCS Body Hair, and you can look at each one of them, and basically what you're trying to do is guess who the hair or body hair belongs to.
All right, let's see.
Okay, so we're gonna go with the first one.
What the hell? I mean, cutie pie?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We start
yeah.
off with an easy.
Starting off with the easy one.
Long flowing.
Don't know
That's
anyone
right.
else that has.
All right, on to the second one. Who
Double
is
lift?
that? Double lift?
Yeah,
His old hair.
That's the 2011
Yeah.
double lift bowl cut.
With the bowl cut. All right, third one. This one's
Freak.
pretty easy. Yeah, Freak.
Mm-hmm.
And the next
Classic.
one.
Fourth is Lemon Nation.
Yeah.
Yeah. The fifth
Fifth
one's really
is
easy.
Yeah.
Hot Shots Pink Hair, and sixth is me.
Oh
Oh,
wow.
wow.
He got this so fast.
Yeah, oh wow. Okay.
He recognizes everybody. We should have picked harder ones.
Well,
Darn it.
I see these people. I've seen these people quite often say
That's
it would be
true.
it would be difficult.
We should have picked the
to
most
find it.
like generic hair, hairstyle,
Yeah.
hair color, and you'd be like, it could be like 5 different people.
Yeah, because I think the background also helped in some of them.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, but Freaks, everybody recognizes Freaks.
So you've been to Canada a few times for our Worlds viewing parties, which was always like great. So, and you've been known as the Prophet before. So the question is, when do you think NA will finally win its first Worlds?
When will NA win its first Worlds? Are we talking about League of Legends or?
Well, I wanted to see us go
Yeah,
like,
no,
Worlds already. So.
I don't know. I have to see them this year, but I don't want to hype it up again. I don't think that this year will be much of a chance, to be honest. So probably not this year. I'm gonna say at least 2 to 3 more years for NA to win World. I highly doubt, with all the new roster changes and additions to teams, that this will be the year that a team wins.
So, do you miss Vancouver, and when can we expect you to come pay us a visit?
I was gonna ask that. Darn it.
So I do miss Vancouver. I am there quite often. I will be going back there in about a week or so, actually.
Oh.
Only for a couple of days because my passport is expiring, so I need to renew it. I mean, I miss the air. I miss the public transportation because it's quite easy to just hang out with people all the time there, as opposed to here where I had to Uber all the time before, and now I have to bike, which it's not that bad, but it's definitely inconvenient at times. You know, I don't want to be on my bike the entire time, or I don't want to have to take a $40 Uber to just meet someone.
Yeah, true.
Do you have any
Okay.
final shout outs you want to make?
Yeah.
Or sponsors you want to plug, or anything you want to say to your
Oh,
fans?
no, I don't have any sponsors by myself. Just thank you for having me on this. I really appreciate it, and just thanks to everybody that's not only a fan of me, but also a fan of esports.
All right, thanks.
Sure,
It's great
we'll
talking
see.
to you.
Thank you so much. That's
All right.
very nice.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Have a great night. A huge thank you to Crumbz for your time today.
I hope you guys liked the video. We at Akshon Esports always strive to bring more great esports content to you, the community.
Let us know in the comments who you want to see us interview next. As always, make sure to subscribe to Akshon Esports.